All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. Let me just make sure that I've got everything going here. Um, Good morning. Nope, good afternoon. Happy Friday. My name is
Good
Shawnee
afternoon.
Harvey. I am the Creative Industries Division Director for New Mexico Economic Development. And today we are going over our Creative Industries Business Development and Expansion Grant. And I'm joined this morning by Arlen Nelson, and I'll pass it over to you, Arlen.
Good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday as well. My name is Arlen Nelson, and I am the Creative Industries Division Coordinator with the state of New Mexico.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So today we are going to go over a grant, as I said. We're going to go over some eligibility, the different areas that are eligible. We're going to look at the funding that is available, different funding uses, talk about the reporting requirements as well as scoring, and then we'll have some time for Q&A here at the end. So to kick it off, we're going to start with an eligibility overview for our Creative Industries Business Development and Expansion Grant. Whoopsie daisies. And let me get up here to the top. And then Arlen, if you have a chance, if you can kind of keep an eye on the lobby and let people in as they're coming in.
Yep. And I'll
So
be looking at the
for
chat too.
this grant, it is going to be open to nonprofit, for-profit organizations, um, and indigenous nations and tribes and pueblos, but this particular grant application is looking at specifically for existing creative businesses to help them with business development and expansion. Um, we're going to be doing 7 different awards, and we're also looking at support organizations as well. So organizations that support creative industries, companies, and workers. But the eligibility for this is open to small businesses. And we are looking at businesses that have been in operation since 2021 or earlier. We are hopeful that in the future, we might be able to look at doing startup grants and startups for creative industries organizations. However, with a lot of the questions that we've been getting from legislators and our current funding, we are looking at helping existing businesses that have been in existence since 2021 or earlier for this particular grant application. Um, now I'm going to pass it off to Arlen, who is going to go over the different areas that are eligible for this grant and what our creative industries are.
All right. So the 7 different industry areas that is going to be eligible for this grant, and also that we serve within the creative industries, is going to be starting off with performing arts, visual arts, and literary arts. Uh, that's going to be more into actual dance, performance, or either theater. We also have entertainment, media, information, and broadcasting. That be dealing with uh, news broadcasting, could also lead into social media content creation or otherwise. Uh, Applied arts design, including architecture, landscape, architecture, museum, and gallery professions. Promotion, marketing, graphics, and industrial design. We also are serving technology and computer system design, software design, coding, and digital media. We are also supporting crafts or artisan professions, including metal, wood, glass, ceramics, paper, printing, textiles, and culinary arts. And lastly, it will be for the organizations that support our creative industries, and that includes that directly supports the growth, development of business, and entrepreneurs that provide creative products or services in the 6 categories that are displayed on the screen. But also could lead into skilled trades gain or skills gained services as well. And a good example of that will be like our technical assistance contractor, Art Hub, who actually does skills trades in the creative industries area.
Thank you, Arlen. And then I did want to note there should be a Q&A function at the top of your screen. If you can put your questions in there, as opposed to the chat, we'd like to kind of go through them in that Q&A. We'll try to catch them in both places, but if you can use the Q&A function, that's where we'll be pulling our questions from towards the end. Yeah, okay. So the purpose of this grant is that we are looking at supporting existing businesses and organizations, as well as those who are doing work specifically supporting creative industry companies and workers. We are going to be doing this particular grant for business development and expansion. And we know that when we launched the grant on Monday, there was a couple of issues with getting to the next page or checking certain boxes and items. All of that has been fixed at this time, so the application should be fully functional. If you are running into any issues where you're not able to click things, let us know. But most of the time now, if you're not able to proceed forward in the application, it's because you are probably missing either an upload or a document, and you may have checked the box that said that you were going to upload and did not upload something, or you said you were going to write something in and nothing is in the box. So we did do our best to fix all of that. So if you're still experiencing issues, please let us know. So the hope for this grant is that we have up to $10,000 awards available for 7 different awardees, and our expectation is that we're going to be doing 1 awardee per creative industry cluster. So those were the clusters that you saw on the screen earlier, and then 1 award for a support organization. We know that this is not the same as the $100,000 awards that we did do with the initial funding before the division had any staff, but our funding was cut to $200,000 on an annual basis versus the $2 million that we were given as a one-time special appropriation at the beginning before there was any staff in the division. So we know that it might not be what was done previously, but we're doing our best with what we're working with and still trying to capture supporting all of our creative industries and supporting folks across the state. So this particular grant is looking at expansion and development, and I'm going to let Arlen talk a little bit more about the funding uses right now.
All right. So the uses for this funding is going to be if you're putting the money towards inventory, for example, if you are a crafter or jeweler, being able to put money into your materials needed to be able to make something. You also can put it into equipment and software, and that being any software that you need to be able to help make your business functional. We are also looking at marketing, promotion, and digital presence, knowing that there is a need for having a virtual presence or digital presence online, as well as a physical presence whenever it comes down to promoting some of the services within your business or organization. Another one is going to be infrastructure. So if you're looking to improve some of the infrastructure of your business, that is something that you can use the funding towards. Technology improvement and any existing programs that you may already have. No new programming. It does have to already be in existence. And then building evaluations, metric capacity for reporting, impact, or measuring engagement. That is for if you are trying to improve the way you are taking in your metrics, being able to show and justify the use of your business. And that normally is needed to be able to gain more funding, especially if you're going for other grants. So that is the opportunity that those are the 7 uses that we're looking for people to actually utilize. And then I'm gonna go ahead and move to the reporting requirements as well, because as we all know, we are working for the creative industries, but also looking at it from an economic viewpoint, right? An economic development viewpoint to see how the creative industries can be an economic driver. So we are requiring a little bit more reporting in this grant, and we are going to be looking at, and grantees are going to be required to report overall on the economic contributions, including revenue growth and financial impact, new business partnerships or collaborations, increase in employees, contractors, or creatives hired, audience reach and engagement metrics. We're really looking for that return on investment, the ROI, for grant funds used, challenges and successes in the grant expansion, suggestions for the future of programming for our division. So we'll be able to know what we can do to be able to help boost up this grant and actually help the people who are awarded with it. The number of businesses and entrepreneurs impacted and the industry area, if applicable. And that is something that we just wanted to be able to see how we can actually see our impact on the 6 industry clusters that we have, and the 7 being the support organizations as well. Then final executed budget for the full grant of $10,000, including invoices, final costs, receipts, and matching funds if applicable. And then other relevant measurements and other determinations by the division. So that will be something that the winners we will be in communication with, and we can make some adjustments to what our reports are based off the fund uses.
Thank you, Arlen. And then again, there's going to be a lot of a little more stringent reporting with this grant, and that is due to the fact that we have a lot of questions from legislators and elected officials and community members about how do we track the impact of creative industries growth and what does that look like. So we are going to be looking a little bit harder at what those look like, and there's also going to be a 6-month check-in for our selected grantees. These grants are going to be done similarly to how we have done our previous grants. So they will be awarded as advance payments. And what that means is the money will be awarded to the grantee up front, but there will still be basically probably about a year of reporting. So that goes on after this. You'll have the grant award up front, and then you'll have probably between 6 and 12. We'll do a 6-month check-in, and then at the end of the 12 months after the grant agreements are finalized, that's when your final reporting will be due. So we know that we are in the middle of March, and for those of you who have maybe not worked with the state before, our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. So although our fiscal year will end on June 30th, 2025, the reporting for this particular grant will extend past that season. So it won't be that you're expected to kind of complete everything that you have set out in your application by June 30th. It'll be by the time the reporting is due, which we project will probably be closer to like May of 2026, if I'm projecting my months out correctly. But either way, it'll be about 12 months. So applications will be open through March 30th, and they must be submitted through this online portal and application portal. We've had grants come through in the past for submissions that were either late or missing some of the required pieces, or were submitted via email. We will not be able to accept any applications that do not come in submitted through this portal, and you will receive a thank you message at the end of your submission that lets you know that your application has been received. If you do not see that message, make sure you've got all the boxes checked, go through and double check that you've made all your attachments, and make sure that you get that end screen. If you're still having issues with that, please do let us know, but we will only be reviewing applications that come fully completed through this particular form. I'm going to scroll back up. Sorry to go very fast. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. What I would recommend for folks who have maybe not applied for a grant before, or are, this is the first time that you're doing this, make sure that you read all of this information very thoroughly before you reach out with questions or apply. We've done our best to answer all of the questions and requirements and things that come up in our other conversations within this grant application. On page 1, you will be taken through a survey about what you know about or about how you heard about the grant, maybe a little bit of background on if you've worked with the division in the past. That is because data is the best way that we can show interest, reach, engagement, and demonstrate that there is a need for this funding to the state legislature and other folks that we might be talking to about finding funding, whether that's federal, private, or philanthropic. So you will be taken through a very brief survey on the first page, and then on page 2 is where you can read through the intention, where the award ceiling is. And I do want to note that by statute, we're required to make sure that 50% of all of our grant funding goes directly to rural or underserved communities. That is just something that was made mandatory in the legislation. So that is why you're asked. So again, here's the requirements, funding uses, which creative industries cluster do you apply under? We're wanting to make sure that you're applying within there, but you are asked to let us know what part of the state and what region that you're from. There's a map a little bit further down that asks you for your area, and that's why we're asking that, because we're looking at geographic and demographic information to make sure that we're meeting those 50% requirements. This note for applying organizations is relatively important. I think this fiscal year, the state of New Mexico is requiring all grantees to receive 1099s if they are not nonprofit or local government entities. So that is something that you want to take into consideration on this grant. I think historically, when the state has done funding, they have not 1099'd businesses or contractors for grant awards. And that is changing this year. So you will be responsible and you will receive a 1099 if you're selected for this grant. So while you're building your budget, we just want to make sure that you're taking into account what you might need to set aside for GRT or taxes in your budget. W-9s. We do ask you for a W-9, and I have to emphasize this. When you're working with the state, becoming a vendor, a supplier, or a grantee, this is probably the biggest hurdle into getting into the state system. Department of Finance and Administration, or DFA, will not accept W-9s that have a digital signature. So that means you might be able to fill out your name and address on the computer, but you're going to have to print that out, sign it, and then either scan or take a photo of it so that we can have that W-9 and submit it to the state for processing. I've added a few more notes here around like single member LLCs. They are asked to check the sole proprietor box if that is the kind of single member LLC that you have registered. Otherwise, if you're another form of LLC, you have to determine your tax classification status. So I'll just open. Anyway, it does not want to let me open that right now. That links to the state W-9. So we can either accept a federal W-9 or the state W-9, but we cannot accept previous W-9s from different cities or different organizations. So make sure that you're using the W-9 that's linked here or providing one that is federal. This is the demographic information that we're looking for. We predominantly score we don't score based on region, but when we're looking at our 50% requirements, we're leaning mostly on your geographic location. So we're looking at not necessarily by direct region, but we'll be asking for your counties, because we know historically that a lot of funding goes to Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Albuquerque, and those are the more urban areas. So we need to know when folks are in a rural location, and that's what we're mostly scoring. In terms of it being underserved, right now we are asking for demographic information on like minority owned status and LGBTQIA disabilities or non-English speaking. That is not something that is completely optional information. So when it comes to our 50% mark for this particular grant, we're looking solely at geographic location. The department has to determine a rule around what constitutes underserved. So your demographic and personal identity information in this application is completely optional and has nothing to do with the scoring or the 50% mark. We will be looking at our 50% rule solely based on this breakdown and basically the location of where your business is registered. I don't know if there's anything else that we're looking through. You'll be asked to kind of identify your NAICS code in your different cluster areas. And then I do want to take us back down to the bottom. Arlen, I'll let you talk about scoring. There is a breakdown here though for our scoring rubric, and these are out of a possible 750 points.
All right, and so as you can see here, our scoring rubric is pretty basic, I would say. I mean, compared to most scoring rubrics, we do have pretty much 4 main areas, and that's specifically being eligibility. Section 1, pretty much of your business expansion growth, that's going to be the main beginning questions, are kind of like the meat and potatoes. As you can see, that's a 300-point section. So be sure when you're going through this application, like Shani said multiple times, be sure you're reading every question. If certain questions are not answered, that will be going into your points. If I do not see certain questions answered, it can lead to less points. So you may not have 300 if you didn't read through everything. So make sure you are reading through everything and answering every question to the best of your ability to the T. Our second area is going to be funding requests and budget. That's where we're going to be able to see like where do you see your uses of funding? How does that relate to your budget? And just being able to break that down a little bit more on like where do you see the funds actually helping you? That is going to be 150 points. Then you get to see we're really focused on the data collection and impact evaluation for this grant process, because we really want to be able to show the ROI when it comes down to how much grant money we're putting out there and what's the return on the economic value that it brought to your community and into your business. So that is going to be something that we are really looking into to see how are you taking in your data, how are you actually showing your previous year of income and revenue and how many employees you have, and then bringing that back to how did you improve or use the funding to help improve that and what impact that made. And overall, like Shani already said, this is going to be at a 750 points. We did our best to try to make this scoring as easy as possible, knowing that we are a division of 2 people. So we will be looking through every application and reaching out to everyone who actually applied and let them know whether they got it or not in the future. So to the best of our ability, we try to make this scoring rubric as simple as possible for both the users who will be applying to this grant and then for us who will be actually scoring it.
Yeah, and we are, as Arlen said, a division of 2, but for this particular grant, knowing that we will likely have a large number of responses, although we only have 7 awards available, we will be working with other staff members in our department who will join our grant review committee. So just so you all know that as well. I'm going to take us now over to the page 3 of the grant. This is the end of the application, and it lets you know that you will be an email confirmation. I'm not sure if you receive a direct email confirmation, but I know that there is a screen that will pop up once you hit submit that says, "Thank you, we received your submission." So you will have that. And that's just the last page of the application. So that kind of concludes the basic overview of what's going on with this particular grant. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can move over to the Q&A at this time.
Okay.
And
So I'm going to start with the first question that I saw in the chat, and I'm just going to go through the questions that everybody has asked, and we can go from there. So
Great.
First question is, if you are a consultancy that works with clients to support their marketing, does that count towards the clusters or towards the support category?
That's a good question. It sounds like it might be a marketing firm is what I'm picking up from that question. So that would probably be under the creative industry cluster for marketing and media organizations. But I would need more information. Let me know if that answers the question. And then are you in the Q&A or are you in the chat, Arlen?
I'm in the chat because that particular person does not have access to the Q&A, so they put that in the chat.
Okay. Consultancy that works with clients to support their marketing. I mean, it sounds like a marketing firm. If it is not a direct like marketing or promotional digital media marketing firm, then it sounds like it's more of a support organization. So I would leave that to the business owner to determine if, we're thinking about whatever your main core operations are, that is the area that we would want you to apply under.
Right. And then the other question I did answer to them, but it was, can 501c3s, are they able to apply for the grant?
501c3s are eligible for this grant. Yes.
All right. Is woman-owned considered minority in New Mexico?
That's a great question. I feel like we usually have women-owned business on that demographic data question. We would probably be modeling it based off of what the federal requirements, which are in flux right now, would look at. So women-owned businesses in my book are minority-owned businesses. However, as I said, that is demographic information that is not being looked at for the 50% scoring. That's only for like our data collection purposes. So we know who we're serving, what communities that we're supporting, and where we might be falling short so that we can make adjustments to make sure that we're reaching everyone.
All right. And now another question is that from Heidi specifically. Was listening on behalf of a business that started as a local artist group before 2021, but they did not open officially as a business until 2022. And they are wondering whether they meet the 2021 requirement or not.
We
to
are
be an
looking for
established business.
right. So articles of incorporation, that's what we're looking at when we're talking about that date. We want to know that the business was registered with the Secretary of State 2021 or previous. So that's what we would be looking at for that. We are recording this. It will be available afterwards. So Arlen, I'm going to pull us out of the chat. I want to go over to the Q&A for the folks who did put their questions in. We will
that
put
was
a
in Q&A.
Okay. We will put a recording up on the website. And we will be pulling, probably not the application questions, but we will pull the information, eligibility, and overview onto the website so that folks can look through that directly without having to like get all the way into the application. But we'll discuss, and if we need to put a page with basically all the questions and process, we can do that.
Okay. The next question is, what are some examples on how a visual artist might use this grant? Supplies, equipment, creating a website. And then they also went further to say for a local rural newspaper that would like to develop an online advertising strategy, it seems like this grant would be ideal. Please confirm.
Okay, yes, that sounds like it's asking about the funding uses, which we did go through. So inventory, right? So supplies and equipment, things that visual artists might be using to produce works that they're going to turn around and sell. Equipment and software, marketing, promotion, and digital presence, infrastructure, technology improvements. So websites, yes. Existing programs, and then building evaluation and metric capacity. Arlen, I'm not seeing that question in the Q&A. So I'm not sure
That was
where
like 3 minutes ago. That was from Monique Parker in the Q&A.
Okay, I see if 501c3s are able to apply. We did answer that. It's a yes.
And yeah,
share
yeah.
screen. So there wasn't a formal slide of like, there wasn't formal slides along with this. We kind of just scrolled through the grant application. So we will just make sure that that information is made available with the recording.
And then next, Rick asks, do we need to upload a W-9 during the application or only if we are selected? I can answer that if you want me to, which is, yes, you are gonna have to upload your W-9 in the application. That's for us to already have it. So if you do, if you are selected, we can already send it off and we can kind of cut down that process.
Yeah, the plan is like we appreciate if you can have it submitted with the application, just because if we have to wait till after we submit at the end of scoring, but the process takes so long and then we're kind of waiting for people to send it back to us that we're just trying to get it ahead of time so that we have it. If you're not selected, again, we are a state agency, so we have the W-9s, but this is a completely secure form. And we will not keep your W-9s if you were not selected for the grant. So they will be destroyed and it's not like they're on file or anything for future use.
All right, and then the next question is, will the executive order number 14173 affect how these grants will be given? That is the EO applying to DEI concerns with any grantee or sub-grantee.
I guess I don't even know where you're seeing these questions. No, any federal level executive orders will not affect this program. This is a state funded program and these are state funds. So federal executive orders are not, won't directly be impacting this funding. And again, our 50% rural, and underserved eligibility is looking specifically at geographic location. So we will not be scoring based on demographic information outside of that. We are just required to make sure that 50% of these grants do go to rural communities. And then I do have one, let me see here. I have one question that says Four Corners Search and Rescue, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve tribal communities. We want to be clear about eligibility. So again, we are looking at creative industry companies and businesses or organizations who support creative industry companies and workers. So your core operations would need to be serving direct creatives, right? So in your business mission statement, in your core operations, these are the people that you would be serving. So typical business support organizations such as, who would not be eligible, is like an SBDC, but there are a lot of economic development support organizations who support small businesses, but they support small businesses on a broad scale and you can be from any industry area. Those organizations would not be eligible for this grant because we are looking for organizations that solely support businesses, companies, and creatives and entrepreneurs in the creative industries only. So if you're looking to apply under the support organization, your core activities should be to support people who are doing work in these areas. And that's who we're looking at for this.
I got one from Bryant. It's going to be connected to culinary arts. Says we've been in operation since 2020. We would like to expand our food offerings to better serve our downtown community, tourism, and hiring in our area. Would this grant apply for us to acquire more equipment and supplies for that purpose?
Yes, that sounds like a fit for the grant. Also, how many applicants do we expect for this round? That's really hard to say. I can tell you that when we did the local government grants, I think we had 34 applications and 18 awards. When we did the creative industry season grants this last round that closed in February, we had 30 applications with only 7 awards. And again, we have 7 awards for this particular grant. And I can tell you that we have roughly 80 people on the call. And we had over 130 people registered for this webinar by the middle of the week. So that could mean that there's multiple staff from organizations, et cetera. So I can't really tell you what our expectation is on the pool of applicants. We're kind of just gonna take it as it comes and hope that we can handle it.
All right, the next question I have is, as you mentioned, this grant is for rural areas. Are you considering the Santa Fe rural area?
Businesses that are located in Santa Fe likely will not be considered rural because Santa Fe is not a rural community. It's kind of looking at population size. If you are located in Tesuque, Chimayo, Española, etc., yes, that's rural, but we're looking at your cities, counties, and locations to make that determination. Again, that's something that we may have to consider in the future, and that goes more into underserved, right? So there is particular communities in Santa Fe, in Albuquerque, that, International District, South Side, it's South Side of Santa Fe, International District, Albuquerque, those are underserved areas. But unfortunately, without a formal rule from the department at this time, we are only going to be looking at cities and counties, and we're basing that probably off of population.
I do see one question in the comments that I kind of want to at least bring up is coming from Samantha Odom. I'm applying for inventory. Does it need to be bought in New Mexico? My factory is in LA.
I did see that. I don't think we put stipulations on where equipment needs to be purchased, so I can't really, I would not be able to really say that. I wouldn't be able to speak to that. We said inventory is an eligible cost. We're looking at businesses who are located in New Mexico. So, that is more up in the air, but I would say you could talk about that in your application. But I don't want to give any unfair advantage. So I would say that we have not. We didn't put any guardrails on that. So I'll leave that. Let me see, local studio tour that started as a grassroots organization, now in our 17th year. 501c3. What category do we apply under? All of our artists work in different media, from painting, digital, woodwork, glass, ceramics, etc. So it's leaning on the crafts and artisan professions, because as you can see on the screen, our crafts and artisan professions is we know that those areas all have different needs within them, but they are treated as a cluster from the legislation. So it was leaning that way when I'm reading the way that your question is posed. So that sounded like it would be crafts and artisan professions. Again, we're looking at your core operating activities. So if you have more visual artists than you do the crafts and artisans, again, the creative economy is very nuanced and difficult to measure, and hard to kind of separate and distinguish when we're talking about some of those things. So it might be something that we have to take into consideration in the future, that there is crossover. But we designed it this way because this is how the legislation was written, and these are kind of the 6 areas that were designed.
I got another question, says, can you please give some ideas of measuring economic impact? If an org doesn't have retail sales, is it applicable or acceptable to count job creation? Also, if the org produces elements of live public events, how to best capture inbound revenue from visitations, attendance, and etc.
Give some ideas of measuring economic impact. I would say it might be something that you want to look into and kind of do some research on your own of how your organization can measure some of that. We do typical economic development measurements do include things like job creation, people hired. Um, if you are doing things like performances, audience engagement and attendance rates and ticket sales make sense. Um, I don't think that we could necessarily tell you how to best capture that information. We're asking you how you currently capture that information. Um, and then again, that's some of the grant uses as well, right? We talked about reporting and metric capacity as a potential use. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question. But I hope that I did it justice.
I think that'd probably be the best thing to kind of, for who asked that question, it'd be the best uses of this funding if you apply is to think about how you could use the money to understand how you can gather metrics for the services you provide. I have another one that says, could the fund be used to cover internships for a media arts production studio and STEAM youth leadership program? Interns are ages 17 to 29. I believe in the uses section, we did talk about staffing, so I think internships could fall into that same piece. What do you think, Shawnee?
Yeah, I think that we didn't specifically mention staffing, but we talked about um an existing program. So if you are already doing an internship program on an annual basis and you're looking at, providing additional internships, um, yeah, I think that that fits as a use under if it's an existing program, but if it's something brand new, unlikely.
I just want to make sure we go back to the Santa Fe County
Oh, yeah,
considerations.
yeah, Santa Fe County. No, we're not looking at county. We're looking at counties, but we're looking at the city that folks are located in. So Santa Fe County is still has rural cities and towns. So that's what we'll be looking at. So yes, rural cities, towns, villages, et cetera, in Santa Fe County will still be treated as rural. Okay, I think I answered that.
Yeah, you did. I was going to say. Kelly, I did see your question about your organization arts, and then you have an internship program. I think we just answered that. Since it's an existing program, um, that would be where you can utilize that funding for your internship program. And she did ask, would you be considered a support organization? I think you also would be considered just a creative industry cluster because you do fall in some of our clusters as well. When it comes down to performing, you have the performance stage, you have the cinema, you have the music theater. So that would be like a performing arts category, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong in saying that, Shawnee?
I think that that makes sense.
Okay. I do have another question from Simply Solid. We capture information about consumer wants and needs to gauge marketing and trends. We will offer our shop. Would this be considered measurable data?
I
I
think
would
it's a
say,
piece of the piece of measurable data, absolutely. You're gauging business needs on an ongoing basis, but when we're talking about measurable data, we're talking about reach, impact, growth of the business, right? I think the needs for your business is more about what you're tailoring your service or products to, which is a relevant measure, but we're talking about economic impact more so. So it's a piece of it.
all right.
Again, this has to be for existing programming, so we are not looking at establishing new programming with this particular funding. It is for existing businesses that are looking to do growth or development expansion. So, new programming with an arts and cultural district would not be eligible under this funding. We're looking specifically at um existing business development and expansion. if you're talking about funding for arts and cultural districts, that's more on the side of infrastructure. So from the way that I'm seeing the question, I do not think that that would be eligible because we're not looking at new programming with this funding. We're looking at helping existing creative businesses look at growth and expansion.
And I just want to address one thing too. For anybody who could be doing work outside of where their business is registered, for example, if you're registered in Albuquerque, but you're doing work in Gallup, you are still deemed an urban area because it's going off of where your business is registered.
Yeah, and I would say, as well as for the previous question, when we're talking about new programming or doing events that might be, more along the public infrastructure route in main streets and arts and cultural districts, that is more along the lines of what we did for the Creative Industries Season grant, that was looking at events that were providing opportunities for creatives. And full transparency, as I said, our budget $200,000 to kind of impact the entire state on top of having to do like programming and contracts. So our hope is that in the future, we might be able to make specific grant funds looking at infrastructure or arts and cultural districts and separate funding for like each of the creative industry clusters, but there's just not a great way to do that with the limited funds that we have now. Under the uses section, can you please explain infrastructure? Infrastructure is if I have to pack up and leave this office, it's so like I'm going to go with land building and infrastructure when we talk about LEDA, Local Economic Development Act funding for the Economic Development Department. Infrastructure is the building, right? If I'm going to take everything out of my office right now, anything that I can like pack up and move with movers, anything left behind is going to be the infrastructure. So we're talking basically about building and expansion, right? Whereas if we're talking about equipment and software, if I'm an artist and I need to buy an easel, that's equipment. However, in materials to be creating, that's also equipment. Inventory purchases would be more like what Arlen said for jewelers or folks who need to like buy materials to then make their goods and services. That's more inventory and equipment. And also, I think in the grant application, we ask you to kind of check the boxes of what your funding will be used for. Let me get down here. So if there's any confusion there, please just check both. And then please, when you're doing your breakdown, just detail it as best as you can. And again, you can either upload these or write it out in the boxes.
Okay. And I saw this one that says, I know the actual business entity needs to be established in 2021 or earlier. Is there a time that the existing program needs to be established beforehand, pretty much, I guess? And I know if I have to go off the application, we did not have
didn't
a
specify.
specific time.
Yeah, we didn't specify.
Yes. So it just has to be an existing program. And more to say, it has to be something that you actually have some kind of metrics on, because that lets us know how has it been conducted before. So it gives us a basis to know what was your metrics and measurement for how successful that event was or program. I think that was my last question in the Q&A section.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Oh, let me see. I think we got another one.
Yeah, just got one.
Artists and residents organizations are, to me, they're artist support organizations because you're providing a residency program for artists to have an opportunity. So to me, that is a support organization. That is where I would file that under. Okay, I am gonna wrap us up now. Again, this recording will be available on the website I've seen some asks about getting the questions and the overview onto the website so that folks don't have to click through the application. We will see about doing that. And then the recording will be up on our webpage, and we'll just make sure that that's available here. So this box up at the top has a little bit of details there. So we'll go ahead and add the recording and any of the other information. What we won't do is add the creative industry cluster areas, because you can just find those right here.
Mhm.
And then again, our 7th is for support organizations. So we'll make sure that we detail some information around there. But thank you all for your time. We look forward to reviewing your applications. And next week, early next week, we're going to have a huge slew of announcements around what we're doing for creative industry season, which will be taking place from March 15th to June 15th. So there's going to be networking events, open office hours, workshops, in-person events, and online virtual discussions. And, you know, we're also, like I said, we'll be out in community and we're doing open office hours. So when you all have feedback, comments, questions, we're going to be working to kind of connect directly to the community. And again, we did make some updates on the webpage. So if you have questions about, you know, who we serve and what we do, there's a little section here under that where we're trying to kind of make it clear for folks what we're focused on and what we're doing. So keep an eye out on the newsletter. We'll get the recording up. And thank you all. Happy Friday. We really appreciate your time and appreciate your interest. And we're looking forward to reading your applications.
Thank y'all so much for attending.